Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for March 10th through 16th. This week I read 4 books, I watched 3 shows, and I listened to 2 books. Most of those books were read for the Plug and Readathon, which was co-hosted by myself and Zach. It was a readathon focusing on reading digital copies of books. First this week I read Collateral Damage by Taylor Simonds. This was an ARC copy I got directly from the author because she's a friend of mine I met at BookNet Fest last year. And this is her debut novel. It comes out on June 25th. And all I can say is if you like superhero books, pre-order this now. Meg lives in a city that has had some crime problems in the past, and they decided to solve them going the sci-fi route of creating superheroes. As you can imagine, this has actually led to a lot of people dying and a lot of property damage. And in short, Meg is not a fan. She's just a teenager trying to scrape by who got her GED so she could work in a coffee shop, and she just wants to be able to do that without things falling on her. I loved tons of things about this, but one of my favorite things is it's full of platonic friendships. All too often when we have a book like this, you know that the main character is going to have a love interest and that's going to be a whole big part of the story, but that's not here. So if you are looking for a book with great platonic friendships, definitely pick this one up when it comes out. This one also takes the stereotypes associated with superheroes and turns them on their head, and I laughed a lot and I really enjoyed it. The next book I read was also an ARC, and that's the Princess and the Fangirl by Ashley Poston. This is the follow-up to Geekerella. This is a companion novel, so although we see some characters from the previous novel, this is not following the same characters. This book has a dual perspective. One of the perspectives is Jessica Stone, who was the co-star in the Starfleet movie. The other perspective is this girl named Imogen who goes to these cons all the time to help her parents sell merchandise. At this particular con, however, she's meeting one of her online best friends for the first time and also trying to save Amara. Amara was the princess that Jessica played in the Starfleet movie, and things didn't end well for her. Fortunately or unfortunately, Imogen actually looks quite a bit like Jessica Stone to the point where she gets mistaken for her. And then obviously, shenanigans ensue. This was a delightful nerdy follow-up. Characters talk about fame and fandom and queer representation, and there are a ton of queer characters in this. And then every once in a while characters from the previous book pop in, and it's nice to see them there. If you liked Geekerella, I cannot imagine you disliking this book. It was so fun to read. The next book I actually buddy read with Mel from Mel to the Any, and that was The Bride Test by Helen Hoang, and we had conflicting feelings. This again is another companion novel, so this is the follow-up to The Kiss Quotient, but it's following different characters. Kai is on the autism spectrum and has never had a girlfriend, and his mother decides to go back to Vietnam to find him a wife. Essentially, his mom shows up at his house one day and says, by the way, this girl is coming to live with you for the next 3 months, and at the end of it, either you're going to marry her or she'll go back to Vietnam. Mai, who changes her name to Esme when she moves to the United States, is doing this for her own reasons. She has a young daughter at home, as well as taking care of her mother and her grandmother, and would just really like to provide a life for them. One of the things that bothered us the most is Kai doesn't know about this child until 92% into the book. In fact, the utter lack of communication between these two people is something that we really struggled with. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed Helen Hoang's writing in this book, and when they were communicating, it was magic. For example, there's a scene where Kai opens up about his sensory needs and how light touches are very painful to him, and that if you need to touch him, he needs to know ahead of time, and also there needs to be a certain amount of pressure. There's also a lot of great messages to do with sex and sexuality in this book. But ultimately, we didn't end up loving this as much as we both loved The Kiss Quotient. The final book I read this week isn't actually a book now, although it will be a book in the future. One of our challenges for the Plug and Readathon was to read a webcomic, and I continued reading Heartstopper. I read the first volume of this for the Queer Lit Readathon in December and wanted to immediately continue and just forgot to open up a web browser, basically. I tore through this really quickly and caught up, and now I'm just like, but I want more of it, why isn't there more? This is a queer love story between a couple of boys. It's written by Alice Oseman, who I absolutely adore, and obviously it's available online, so you should go ahead and read it. On to what I watched this week. We watched a couple of episodes of the 17th season of Survivor. In fact, this coming week we will watch the finale of that season. And then of course we also stayed current on season 38. I'm becoming more and more interested to see how the edge of extinction thing is going to work out, because so far everybody has elected to go to the edge of extinction. This week we also finished the rest of Steven Universe, and I just can't believe it's over. There's rumors that there's a movie in the works or that there's going to be more seasons, but there's no definite plans that I know of, and I just gonna miss these characters. And then break out your tissues because I watched the entire 3rd season of Queer Eye. Yes, this only came out on Friday and I have no chill. I just adore the Fab Five. I really want them to come into my life and just fix all of my problems. That would be wonderful. And I love the diversity in the heroes that they chose for this season. I also love how often they can connect with people on a very deep level because of a shared experience. But yes, tears every single episode, of course. On to what I listened to this week. The first book was The Girl from the Savoy by Hazel Gaynor. I listened to this because I listened to The Cottingley Secret recently and really enjoyed it. This one is set during and post World War I, and it follows 3 points of view. The first is Dolly, who is starting her job as a maid at the Savoy, which is a very fancy hotel. The second is Loretta May, who is an actress in the West End. Because this is set in London, I probably should have mentioned that. And the third is Teddy, the man that Dolly planned to marry, but he went off to war and didn't really come back. It was really intriguing to watch what service looked like in this time frame, as well as people dreaming of better lives, and then also the fallout of the First World War and how these characters are going to mesh together. There's not a lot else I can say about the plot of this book because it would be rife with spoilers, but so much happens. Although I didn't look it up, I'm 99% certain that the person that did the voice acting on The Cottingley Secret is also one of the voices on this book, which I really appreciated because she's a fantastic voice actress, whoever she is. She slips into other voices and accents very well, which is especially important to me because one of those accents is Irish, and considering I used to live in Ireland, a bad Irish accent really makes me angry. David Boreanaz. I watched all of the seasons of Buffy and most of the seasons of Angel while living in Ireland, and all of David Boreanaz's flashback scenes where he was Irish were so bad. So I just like to give props where props are due when people do decent accents. The other book I listened to this week was my reread for Plug and Readathon, and that was What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. I actually hadn't read this since it came out because I read it as an ARC sometime last year, and it was really nice to get to know these boys again through voices. Arthur is from Georgia, but he's in New York for the summer because his mom had to relocate for work, and he's working as an intern at her law office. Ben is in summer school and just went through a breakup, and he's going to have to see his ex in summer school, and he's just trying to mail back a box of his ex's junk that he left around. They have a meet cute outside of the post office, which turns into Arthur following Ben into the post office, but then also they are interrupted. Both of these boys can't get the other off his mind and kind of try to find each other. There's a lot of things I really enjoy about this book. Obviously, I'm a fan of both of these authors, so I was delighted when I found out they were writing a book together. I also know that there's a lot that went into each of these characters directly from the authors. For example, Adam Silvera is Puerto Rican but white passing, so that plays into Ben's character as well as being somebody who went to summer school. And because Adam is currently working on a fantasy novel, I can only assume Ben's working on fantasy but not wanting to be picked on it is another aspect of his own personality. Whereas on Arthur's side, he is Jewish, which I'm pretty sure Becky Albertalli is, and also just a giant musical fan, which I'm pretty sure, again, Becky Albertalli is. The one bit of rep I haven't looked up to see if it's own voices or not is Arthur has ADD and talks about taking his Adderall, and it's just one of those details that's smoothly dropped in there and it's not a big deal. It's just another part of who he is. I remember when I was originally reading this getting very scared at about 70% because I didn't know if this was going to go really sad because Adam Silvera, but I actually really enjoy how this was wrapped up. Speaking of, that's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!